The quiet hum of the Silverwood Estates Homeowners Association was a deliberate kind of silence. It was the sound of manicured lawns and compliant budgets, of unspoken agreements and the subtle collective nod of suburban decorum. A quiet that had been meticulously crafted over 2 decades. Then came the roar. It wasn't a car, not in the traditional sense. It was a beast, a predator of a machine that shrieked and spat with a ferocity that seemed almost unnatural on their cul-de-sac. The Lamborghini Huracan was a violent slash of emerald green against the backdrop of beige and gray suburbia, and behind its wheel, a woman named Veronica Thorne wore a smile that was less a greeting and more a declaration of war, Mark tending to his rose bushes with the patient hand of a man who found solace in order, paused and stared. He wasn't the only one. Windows across the street became dark, observant eyes. The drone of a lawnmower a few houses down sputtered into silence. For a full minute, the only sound was the deep, guttural thrum of the engine as Veronica pulled into the driveway of the newly purchased single-story ranch house at the end of the street. She didn't turn the engine off right away. She let it sit there, vibrating through the asphalt, a low, arrogant growl that seemed to say, "Look at me. Look at my car. Look at my life." He knew people like this, people who thought their possessions were a personality trait, their bank balance a moral compass. Mark just sighed and went back to his roses. He'd seen new residents come and go. Some fit in, some didn't. This one, he had a feeling, would not. He was right. The first offense came 3 days later. The HOA rules were clear. No vehicles parked on the street overnight. It was for reasons of fire safety and a general sense of community tidiness. The Lamborghini, however, wasn't tucked away in Veronica's 2-car garage. It was parked conspicuously, at the curb directly in front of her house, a beacon of defiance. A politely worded email from the HOA's automated system was sent, reminding her of the policy. The next day, the car was still there, and the next. The tension began to simmer. Old man Harrison, who had a daily habit of walking his beagle, took a detour every morning to glare at the offending vehicle. Mrs. Gable, the neighborhood's unofficial matriarch, was seen standing on her porch with a cup of tea, a look of profound disapproval etched on her face. The quiet hum of the community was being replaced with whispers and the low grumble of discontent. Mark decided to take the diplomatic route. He saw Veronica out by her car, wiping it down with a meticulous, almost reverent care. He walked over, a friendly smile on his face. "Morning, Veronica," he said. "Mark from 2 houses down. Just wanted to introduce myself. We're happy to have you in the neighborhood." Veronica looked up, her expression a mix of surprise and mild annoyance at the interruption. "Oh, right. Hi." She went back to polishing a headlight. "I just wanted to give you a heads up," Mark continued, his tone light. "The HOA is pretty strict about street parking. We've all got to keep our cars in the garage after dark. It's in the bylaws." Veronica's head snapped up. She straightened, her rag now clenched in her hand. "The bylaws? Are you the president of this little club?" "No, just a neighbor." "Trying to be helpful," Mark said, his smile tightening. "Helpful?" Veronica scoffed. "My car is a work of art. It's a statement. It belongs out here where people can appreciate it, not hidden away in some dusty garage. Besides, I bought this place. I pay my dues. The HOA can't tell me what to do with my own property." "It's about the collective good, Veronica. Safety and community standards." "Community standards," she sneered, a venomous edge entering her voice. "I see. Let me guess. Your community standard is a Ford sedan? Is that what this is about? Envy?" Mark's jaw clenched. "No, Veronica. It's about following the rules we all agreed to. Rules that keep this neighborhood looking good and functioning properly." "Oh, it'll function just fine. she said, her smile returning, this time sharp and cold. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a very expensive car to protect, and I'm not going to hide it, because some people are jealous of my success. She turned her back to him, the dismissal so absolute it was like a physical blow. Mark walked away, a knot forming in his stomach. This wasn't going to be easy. The HOA board meeting that Tuesday night was tense. The main topic, of course, was Veronica's car. The president, a mild-mannered man named David, looked exhausted. He held up a copy of the official HOA bylaws. As you can see, Section 4.3, subsection B explicitly prohibits overnight street parking. We have sent 3 notices, and she has ignored all of them. The next step, according to the bylaws, is a formal fine. A fine? For parking my own car in front of my own house? A woman's voice, loud and shrill, cut through the discussion. Veronica had arrived. She marched into the room, a whirlwind of designer clothes and furious indignation. "This is ridiculous," she announced, her voice echoing off the sterile walls of the community clubhouse. "You're all attacking me, just because I have something nice, something you don't." Mrs. Gable, who had been sitting quietly, spoke up. "Nobody is attacking you, dear. It's about the rules." "The rules are for you people," Veronica shot back, her gaze sweeping over the room, a look of utter contempt on her face. "The rules are for keeping this place boring and gray. I'm bringing culture, excitement, and you want to fine me over a car? I could buy this entire neighborhood. I could buy every single one of your little cars and still have enough money left over to pave this street with gold." A gasp rippled through the room. David, the president, stood up. "Veronica, that is enough. You are welcome to state your case, but not to insult the members of this community. The rules apply to everyone." "Do they?" she challenged, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Watch me." With a final, withering glare, she spun on her heel and stormed out of the clubhouse. The meeting dissolved into a confused murmur as people processed her outburst. Mark and a few others watched from the window as she marched across the parking lot, jabbing a finger at her key fob. The Lamborghini's engine purred to life with an obedient roar. She flung the door open, her face a mask of furious, unblinking rage. It happened so fast it was almost impossible to process. The landscaper's old Ford F-150, which had been parked on a slight incline, seemed to simply roll forward. Its brakes must have failed. The momentum was slow but inexorable. It didn't slam into the Lamborghini with a bang, but rather with a sickening, drawn-out crunch. Veronica's scream wasn't one of rage, but of pure, unadulterated shock. The truck's bumper had found its way directly to the front fender of the Lamborghini, caving in the delicate carbon fiber like it was tinfoil. The expensive, meticulously polished headlight was a spiderweb of shattered glass, a gurgle of radiator. Fluid began to leak onto the clean asphalt. She stumbled forward, her face paling, her eyes fixed on the grotesque, unholy union of her prized possession and the rusty work truck. She fell to her knees, the sound of her knees hitting the pavement drowned out by the metallic shriek of the truck's fender as it slid further down the Lamborghini's side. She didn't scream again. She just sobbed, a deep, racking wail of despair that seemed to come from the very core of her soul. The collective silence that followed Veronica's sobs was a heavier, more profound stillness than the manicured quiet of the HOA. It was a silence born of shock, of a shared, unblinking witness to a moment of pure, cinematic karma. The only sounds were the slow, sickening drip of coolant onto the asphalt and Veronica's desperate, gasping wails. David, the HOA president, was the first to snap out of it. He hurried towards the scene, a concerned frown on his face. Miguel, the landscaper, a man of quiet competence and calloused hands, was already there. He was kneeling by the front tire of his F-150, his head tilted, his expression one of weary confusion. "Are you okay, ma'am?" David asked, his voice low and concerned, directed at Veronica. Veronica didn't answer. She was still on her knees, her hands covering her face, her body shuddering with silent sobs. Her designer silk blouse, so pristine moments before, was now spotted with oil and dirt from the pavement. "I don't know what happened," Miguel said, his voice a low rumble. "The parking brake. I had it on. I swear." He pointed at a thin, coiled metal cable hanging uselessly beneath the truck. "It must have snapped. It's an old truck. I can't believe it." He sounded genuinely distraught. Veronica's head shot up. The tears on her cheeks were quickly replaced by a new, more dangerous emotion: rage. Her eyes, red-rimmed and bloodshot, fixed on Miguel. "You!" she spat, her voice a low, trembling hiss. "You did this! You broke it on purpose! You saw my car and you couldn't stand it, could you?" Miguel took a step back, his face a mask of disbelief. "Ma'am, no. That's not what happened. The brake just failed. It was an accident. I am so sorry. Sorry?" she shrieked, scrambling to her feet. The sudden movement made her sway unsteadily. "You think sorry fixes this? This is $250,000 of Italian engineering? It's a work of art. And you with your rusted-out garbage truck, you smashed it." Mark and a few other neighbors had cautiously approached. The initial pity they felt for her was now curdling into a familiar disgust. They had seen this side of her just minutes ago in the clubhouse: the meltdown, the victim complex, the vicious entitlement. "Veronica, calm down," Mark said, stepping between her and Miguel. "He said it was an accident. His brake failed." "He's lying! Look at his truck. It's a death trap. He should have known this would happen. He should be using a safe vehicle. This is negligence. Gross, criminal negligence." She was pointing an accusatory finger at Miguel, her whole body shaking. Miguel looked at Mark, his eyes pleading for understanding. "I just had the brakes serviced last month. The mechanic said everything was fine." He pulled a receipt from his worn wallet. "I don't care about your cheap receipts. You're going to pay for this. I'll sue you for everything you have. I'll own that piece of junk truck of yours and your house and everything you've ever worked for," she screamed, her voice reaching a hysterical crescendo. This was the final straw. Mrs. Gable, a woman who had never raised her voice in her life, stepped forward. "Veronica, that is enough. This man is a hard-working member of this community. He's been doing our landscaping for years. He's not a criminal. He is. He's a criminal. And you're all just siding with him because you're jealous. You're all just jealous of my life," she wailed, tears streaming down her face again, her emotional state swinging wildly between fury and despair. David, the HOA president, finally interjected. "Veronica, this happened on HOA property, specifically the private parking lot of the clubhouse. Your car was illegally parked here after you were formally warned. This is not the street, but it's still a clear violation of the bylaws. The information didn't seem to compute at first. Then her expression went from raging fury to dawning horror. "What?" she whispered. "The bylaws state that the HOA is not liable for damages to vehicles parked in violation of the rules. Your insurance company will not be able to hold the HOA or Mr. Rodriguez here responsible for damages on our property. You are completely and solely at fault for any damages." Veronica's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. The weight of his words seemed to crush the last bit of air from her lungs. She stumbled backward, bumping into Mark, who was standing behind her. No, that's not right," she stammered. She pulled out her phone, her fingers fumbling with the screen. She called her lawyer, a whirlwind of frantic, panicked whispers. The HOA, a landscaper, the truck, the clubhouse. "It's my car, my Lamborghini. I need you to tell me they're wrong. Tell me you can sue them, all of them." She listened, her face draining of color with every word her lawyer spoke. She listened to him explain the concept of negligence, the bylaws, and the crushing legal reality of her situation. She hung up the phone, her hand trembling. The rage was gone, replaced by a hollow, sickening realization. She was truly utterly alone in this. The police and a tow truck arrived, their flashing lights casting a surreal strobe-like effect over the gathering crowd of neighbors. Veronica watched, paralyzed, as the tow truck driver began to attach the winch to the front of her shattered car. The truck's old, rusty cable was a brutal, industrial insult to the Huracan's sleek, expensive lines. She heard the tow truck driver talking to a police officer. "Looks like a failed brake line. He's not at fault. Driver of the Lamborghini was being belligerent from what I hear." "It's on her," the officer confirmed. "No ticket, just a property damage report. She can take it up with her insurance company." Her insurance company. The thought hit her with the force of a physical blow. She had a special policy for the car, an all-risks policy, but it had a massive deductible and specific clauses about non-compliance with local regulations. She had skipped over the fine print, convinced that nothing would ever happen to her or to her car. As the winch groaned, pulling the Lamborghini's mangled front end away from the landscaper's truck, Veronica's phone rang again. She answered it, her hand shaking. It was her husband. "I just got off the phone with the lawyer," he said, his voice calm, but with a frigid, final tone she had never heard before. "The policy we have? It doesn't cover this. He said they're not going to pay a dime, and I'm not. The money I gave you for the car was a gift. It's not my responsibility. You should have put it in the garage like everyone else. And I'm not coming over there to deal with this. You broke it, you fix it." He hung up, leaving a dial tone that was colder and more absolute than any silence she had ever known. The silence that followed the click of her husband's phone call was a vacuum, sucking the very air from the chaotic scene. The tow truck's winch groaned, the car's mangled form was finally free of the landscaper's bumper, and in that moment, Veronica was free too. Free of the rage, the entitlement, the hysterical performance. What remained was a hollowed-out shell. A woman in the center of an audience she suddenly realized she couldn't control or even comprehend. The gaze of her neighbors felt like a physical weight on her shoulders, each pair of eyes a mirror reflecting her humiliation. She didn't walk. She stumbled backward, a puppet with its strings cut, until her back hit the solid, unyielding door of the community clubhouse. She pushed past the half-dozen people still milling about, her movements frantic and clumsy. The lock on her own front door seemed to resist her, her shaking hands fumbling with the keys. She finally got it open, slipped inside, and slammed the door shut, cutting off the world. The house was not a home. It was a brand-new, sterile box, furnished with expensive pieces that had no history, no warmth. The silence inside was not the manicured quiet of the neighborhood, but a dead, oppressive quiet, punctuated only by the ragged sound of her own breathing. She leaned against the cold hardwood floor, sliding down until she was a heap of defeat, at the base of the door. The designer silk blouse, so perfect an hour ago, was now a grimy, wrinkled mess. Her hair, carefully styled, had fallen in damp, sweat-soaked clumps across her forehead. She looked up at the ceiling, at the blank white walls, and for the first time, the house felt less like a trophy and more like a cage. She tried calling her husband again. The call went straight to voicemail. Then a message popped up. "The number you are trying to reach has been blocked." The stark, impersonal finality of it hit her like a punch to the gut. The money for the car wasn't just a gift, it was a leash, a test, and she had failed it spectacularly. The car was her pride, her statement, her ticket to a world she believed she deserved, and now it was a twisted hulk of carbon fiber and shattered glass, and the man who had given it to her was gone. Panic began to set in. This wasn't just about a car. This was about everything. She scrambled to her feet, her mind racing. The humiliation outside was a temporary storm, but the financial wreckage was a permanent state. She needed to fix it. She needed a plan. She went to her home office, a sleek room of chrome and glass she'd barely used. She logged onto her personal, banking, and investment accounts. The numbers on the screen were a crushing reality. While she had her own substantial assets, much of her extravagant lifestyle was tied to her husband's goodwill. The Lamborghini was just the most visible piece of that. The gift had come with a lot of unspoken expectations, none of which she had met. She clicked through her emails, looking for the purchase agreement for the car. She had signed the papers in a whirlwind of excitement and entitlement, barely glancing at the fine print. She found the document, a long, convoluted PDF, and began to read it, her eyes scanning for any loophole, any phrase that could save her. Her heart began to pound in her chest as she read. The gift wasn't a gift at all. It was a joint asset purchase, with a lien against the house, in his name, not hers. A clause she had skimmed stated that in the event of any major, non-insurable damage caused by her negligence, the lien could be called in, and the money immediately due, with the house as collateral. She had no idea. He had told her it was all hers, a symbol of his love. Now she saw the truth. It was a gilded trap, and she had just sprung it. Her world tilted on its axis. The car was a footnote. The real story was the house. Her sanctuary, her symbol of success, was now at risk. She didn't own this place. She was renting it from her husband, and she had just trashed the collateral. She heard a low voice from outside. Mrs. Gable. She looked out the window, peeking through the blinds. The older woman was standing with Mark, her head tilted towards Veronica's house. They were talking quietly, their expressions a mix of concern and something she couldn't quite place. Pity? No. Satisfaction. It was a look of quiet, profound satisfaction. Veronica's blood ran cold. The thought, a terrifying, paranoid whisper, wormed its way into her brain. They had planned this. All of them. The HOA, the landscaper, Mark, Mrs. Gable. They had seen the car, seen her defiance, and had conspired to take her down. The failing brake line, the HOA rule about parking, it was all a setup. The thought was insane, illogical, but to a mind as unmoored as hers, it was the only thing that made sense. She wasn't a villain, she was a victim. A brilliant, wealthy victim, targeted for her success. A new rage, cold and calculated, began to build inside her. It was no longer a hysterical outburst. It was a slow-burning, murderous fury. She wasn't going to let them win. She wasn't going to lose her house, her life, to this petty, jealous little conspiracy. She would fight. She would sue. She would expose them all. She pulled out her phone and started a new search. Lawyers specializing in HOA harassment and property disputes. She began to type out a furious, vitriolic email detailing the grand conspiracy she had just unmasked. She was so engrossed, so lost in her newfound purpose, that she didn't hear the sound of a car pulling into her driveway. She looked up only when a shadow fell across the blinds. A man was standing there, a neat, official-looking envelope in his hand. It was David, the HOA president, his face a solemn mask. He wasn't there to gloat. He was there to serve another notice. Veronica's heart stopped. She knew, with a sickening certainty, that whatever was in that envelope was not a friendly warning. It was the next step in the slow, methodical dismantling of her life, a bureaucratic inevitability that had been set in motion the moment she had parked that car on the curb. She watched him walk up to her door, a harbinger of the final act of her own undoing. Veronica stared at the official envelope through the peephole, a sliver of her world visible through the fisheye lens. David's face, usually so unassuming, was a solemn, unreadable mask. He held the envelope with both hands, a gesture of formal gravity that felt like a threat. The rational part of her mind, the part she had abandoned a long time ago, screamed at her not to open it. But the new, manic part, The one fueled by rage and a growing sense of persecution wanted to seize the next piece of evidence, to confirm the conspiracy and arm herself for the fight. She wanted to prove to the world that she was a victim. She unlatched the deadbolt, the metallic click a stark sound in the silent house. She opened the door just wide enough for her to receive the envelope. "Veronica," David said, his voice flat and professional. "On behalf of the HOA board, I am delivering this official notice. It is a formal response to the incident in the clubhouse parking lot this evening. Please read it carefully." His eyes held no triumph, no malice, just a weary, bureaucratic resolve. It was a look that infuriated her more than any smirk could. A smirk she could fight. This cold, legalistic calm was a wall she couldn't break. "Is this my fine?" she demanded, her voice a strained whisper. "It details the full extent of the damages and the official position of the HOA," he replied, and for the briefest moment, his mask cracked. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and his eyes held a flicker of genuine pity. It was a look that felt more condescending than any insult. "You're all in on this, aren't you?" she accused, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "You and Mrs. Gable and Mark and that landscaper, you saw my car and you couldn't stand it. This was a setup." David sighed, a long, tired sound. "Veronica, that's not what this is about. We're a community. We have rules. The rules protect everyone, including you. It's unfortunate that this happened, but it was a direct result of your non-compliance. It's just that simple." "It's not simple," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "Nothing about this is simple. You people are jealous and small-minded, and you're all going to pay for what you've done." David's face hardened. The pity was gone, replaced by a cold finality. "Good luck with that, Veronica. My advice, read the notice. Your lawyer will be able to explain the situation to you." He turned and walked away, his stride unhurried and his shoulders squared, the very picture of a man who had done his unpleasant duty and was now done with the drama. Veronica slammed the door shut, her chest heaving. She tore open the envelope, her fingers trembling. The document inside was a dry, impersonal legal notice on HOA letterhead. It was not a fine. It was an official declaration. Incident of September 9th, 2025, clubhouse parking lot. This letter serves as formal notification that the Silverwood Estates Homeowners Association is not liable for damages sustained to your vehicle, a 2024 Lamborghini Huracan, registration XXXXX, on the above date. Your vehicle was in violation of Bylaw 4.3, subsection B, prohibiting overnight parking in the clubhouse lot. Furthermore, as per our bylaws, the HOA assumes no responsibility for damages to non-compliant vehicles. The incident has been documented with the proper authorities, and all liabilities fall upon the vehicle owner. Any attempts to seek remuneration from the HOA, the landscaper, Mr. Miguel Rodriguez, or any other community member for damages related to this incident will be met with full legal action in accordance with our governing documents. She read the words over and over, the cold, stark legalese, a language she didn't want to understand. It wasn't an attack. It was a wall. A solid, unbreachable wall of bureaucracy and protocol. There was no conspiracy, no secret plan, just rules. And she had broken them, and in doing so, had created her own downfall. The crushing weight of her self-created reality hit her with a sickening finality. Her husband was gone, her car was wrecked, her money was a lie, and the enemy wasn't an organized cabal of envious neighbors. It was her own hubris. She crumpled the paper in her fist, her mind scrambling for a new target, a new direction for the rage that was a living thing inside her. If she couldn't fight the HOA and her husband was a lost cause, then there was only one person left, the real villain in this narrative, the person whose broken truck had started it all, Miguel. She went to her computer, her fingers flying over the keyboard. She had to find him. She pulled up the HOA records, the landscaping contract. His address was there. A simple, unassuming street in a part of town that was a world away from the pristine cul-de-sac perfection of Silverwood Estates. The rage hardened into a cold, focused resolve. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about vengeance. He had taken her car, and she was going to take everything from him. The drive was a blur. She navigated through the city, the urban sprawl and traffic a jarring contrast to the quiet, leafy streets she was used to. She was a woman on a mission, her mind so consumed with what she was going to say, what she was going to do, that she didn't even notice the sun beginning to set, casting long, bruised shadows across the landscape. She pulled up to his house, a small two-story home with a tidy but worn yard. The grass was a healthy green, and a few vegetable plants grew in a small patch by the front door. The house was modest. It was so small, so simple, it was almost an insult. This man, with his broken-down truck and his tiny house, had been the instrument of her undoing. The irony was a bitter taste in her mouth. She was about to get out of the car when she saw them. 2 children, a boy and a girl, no older than 6 or 7, were playing in the front yard. A small, rusty tricycle sat on the lawn. They were laughing, their joy a bright, unconcerned sound in the humid evening air. The front door opened, and Miguel walked out, a soft smile on his face. He knelt down, and the children ran to him, throwing their arms around his neck. He hugged them close, his face buried in their hair, his expression one of pure, unadulterated love. He looked up, and his eyes met hers through her windshield. His smile didn't fade. He gave her a small, sad nod. He had seen the rage, the entitlement. He had seen it all. But he was here, with his family, in his small, imperfect home, and he was happy. Veronica felt the cold rage inside her flicker and die. It was replaced by a hollow, sickening ache. She had nothing to threaten. She had nothing to take. This wasn't about money. This was about something she had lost, something she had traded away for a sleek green car and a husband's fickle goodwill. This wasn't a man who had wronged her. This was a man with a rich life, a full life, a life of simple, messy, beautiful joy that she couldn't even comprehend. Her heart felt like a lead weight in her chest. She had come to take something from him, to destroy him, and in that moment, she realized with a cold, clear clarity that she had nothing left to take. The sun had set completely, leaving the streetlights to cast a sickly, yellowish glow on Miguel's modest home. Veronica sat in her car, the engine idling, the air conditioning on, but feeling none of it. She was in a cold, desolate place within, herself, a place she had never visited before. The anger that had been her constant companion for the last few hours was gone. It had simply evaporated, replaced by a hollow, sickening emptiness. Miguel's small house, the laughing children, the quiet look of happiness on his face, it had all been too real, too whole. It was a life built not on possessions, but on something she couldn't buy or even comprehend. She shifted the car into drive, her movements slow and deliberate, a robot going through its programmed motions. The drive back to Silverwood Estates was a blur, but this time it wasn't a blur of rage. It was a blur of profound, soul-crushing shame. Every gleaming luxury car she passed, every perfectly manicured lawn, every opulent home felt like a personal insult, a mirror reflecting a version of herself she no longer recognized. She wasn't one of them. She was a fraud. She had paid for her way into their world with a sleek green car and an illusion of a happy marriage, and now all of it was gone. She pulled into her own driveway, the dark, silent house a monolithic tomb. The spot where her car had been, the place she had been so proud to show off, was a gaping, empty hole. The oil stains on the asphalt were a grotesque Rorschach blot reminder of her failure. She stumbled inside, not bothering to turn on the lights. She felt her way through the dark. The designer furniture a series of hard, indifferent objects. She reached for the light switch in the kitchen, and her hand brushed against something on the counter. The crumpled HOA notice. The paper was still in her fist from the drive, a tangible reminder of the cold, legal reality that now governed her life. She smoothed it out on the counter, the stark black words on the white paper, a final, unforgiving verdict. She didn't own this house. She was a guest in a borrowed life, and her tenancy had just been revoked. She leaned against the marble countertop, her eyes closed, her body trembling. The tears came, but they were different this time. There was no hysteria, no wailing, no self-pity. These were quiet, hot tears of true despair, of a woman who had finally been stripped of every last pretense and forced to look at the wreckage of her own making. The car, the husband, the neighbors, they were not the root of her problem. The root was in her, in the way she had lived, in the way she had looked down on everyone else. She wasn't a victim. She was the architect of her own destruction. An idea, a tiny, almost imperceptible whisper of a thought, began to form in the desolate landscape of her mind. It wasn't a plan. It wasn't a calculated move. It was an instinct, a raw, illogical, desperate urge. She needed to do something to prove, not to her neighbors, not to her husband, but to herself, that she was not the monster she had become. She went to her purse, her hands moving with a strange kind of purpose. She pulled out her keys, the ones to her house, her mailbox, and a small gold-plated key she had completely forgotten about, the one to the clubhouse. She had seen it on her key ring 100 times, but she had never used it. She was always the one being let in by the president. She had never needed to open the door herself. She slipped out the front door, leaving it unlocked behind her. The air was cool and still. The neighborhood, usually so quiet at this hour, was unnervingly silent. The other houses were dark, their lights off, their blinds drawn. It was as if they had all gone to sleep, leaving her alone in the world. She walked the familiar, perfectly paved street towards the clubhouse, a ghost in her own neighborhood. The moon was a sliver in the sky, a thin silver scythe cutting through the black. She reached the clubhouse, its silhouette a hulking shadow against the night. She approached the front door, her heart pounding a dull, hollow rhythm against her ribs. She slid the gold key into the lock. The tumbler clicked, and the door swung open, revealing a gaping maw of darkness. She stepped inside. The air was heavy, smelling of old carpet and stale potpourri. She felt her way along the wall, searching for a light switch. She found it and flicked it on. The room was flooded with a stark, unforgiving light. The stage was set, a sterile, empty box. She saw the dent in the wall where her car had hit the side of the building. It was a tiny, inconsequential mark, a little scratch on the facade of her community. Her problem, her grand theatrical tragedy, was just a small inconvenience. A scratch. She sank into a chair, the leather creaking under her weight. Her head fell into her hands. The tears were coming again. She was exhausted, emotionally and physically drained. She had nowhere to go, no one to call, nothing left to do. The silence was absolute. And then, from the back of the building, a door creaked open. The sound was so unexpected, so jarring in the oppressive silence, that Veronica's head snapped up. A light flickered on. Someone else was here.